Hi everyone, it's MechMaster J. Today we're going to talk a little bit about biological mecha. Um, I'm not going to say whatever that means as a little follow-up bit anymore, because I've been doing a lot of recordings, or recording attempts, I should say. This is not the last, or this is not the first one I tried doing, as is the case with most of my videos. This is hopefully the one I'll upload. I'm a little sick, sorry about that. Um, so my thought process here, right, as the game designer and the game player, there are certain things I like and look for in games. I actually tend to enjoy reading rules for games. I like seeing how ideas that make sense get expressed in numbers and crunch and stuff. Like when I read the SCP Tabletop 1.0, um, I felt that the fact that they made increments of one uh, as penalties for certain tasks, it made sense. And they made a system where gun recoil uh, and gun readiness and positioning matter, and that was interesting to me. Right? I'm not used to people saying like, "Oh, well, if you have in the ready position compared to uh, having it ready and being crouched, or having it ready and being braced." Right? My mind was blown with that. Right? That was included in a game, and that actually kind of helps balance the game out, I think, in terms of combat, because there's characters that aren't going to use guns in SCP. Just saying. Um, anyway, there's four components I think of for game material. This is not the same as talking about the pillars of gameplay. This is a little different. There's the quest, right? The task to do, and the quest is a long chain version of the task to do, right? Are you retrieving an item? Are you uh, hunting someone down? Are you apologizing to a friend? Hypothetically, that could be an entire quest, is to go apologize to a friend. Especially in one of those more narrative, emotional type games, right? Um, or in a game of social combat, which I, I don't like social combat. Um, I find it hypocritical because it doesn't teach you social skills. It teaches you more combat. Call it combat. Call it brainwashing. I don't know. Just it's not social combat. It's combat. It's just combat. More combat. You didn't really change the rules much. It's just combat. So there's the quest to do. There's the aesthetic. What's it look like? What's everything around you look like? What's it smell like? What's it feel like? What's it touch like? Uh, is it squishy and gooey? Is it hard and cold? Is it on fire? Is the fire blue or green or purple instead of orange or red or yellow? Um, there's the game effect. You have a floating skull. The skull is magic. It's a dark evil creature. It has the ability to bite you 3 times uh, in a row, and it's treated as 3 different attack rolls. And whenever it hits you, uh, you roll a percentage dice, and it has a 30% chance, uh, with a cumulative 10% chance of poisoning you. So every time it bites you, if it doesn't bite you and then poison you, uh, the first time it might have a higher chance of biting and poisoning you the second time, and if it misses, then you don't add the additional 10%. And poison says that you take 2 points of damage over time unless you are made of metal or stone. And being made of metal or stone is specifically acquired through particular templates, blah, 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 right? There's That's the entire thing, right? You look at the spell effects in 5th edition, they're nothing but effects, except for the little, like, sentence or two of text that doesn't say a game effect, as well as the name. And then there's what you get out of it. So let's break this down in a simple example. You're a knight. That's your aesthetic. It's all fantasy aesthetics. Your job is to kill a dragon. Your capability is that you have a magic sword of dragon hunting. Not dragon slaying, dragon hunting. It tells you where the dragon is, and it can cut a dragon better than a normal weapon that it would ordinarily be immune to, but it's not going to deal lethal damage per hit. And then your reward is you gain 20 experience. Well, no, that's kind of low for a dragon, isn't it? Let's say 2,000 experience. That sounds like a big number. Plus 3,000 gold, and you gain a noble title. So you get to have something nice to roleplay later, where you get not just knighted, but you get recognized by uh, the king, right? In some way that is more magnanimous than other knights, right? Because I like to divide the reward into two different sections, which is the game character experience and the player experience. Sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes they're not. But one of them is something you can't necessarily account for as much. It's something you can try to account for. It's easier to think, well, okay, if something is a nice and big reward, it'll be even funner. But it kind of gets wrapped into the whole experience overall, right? So, you're a knight. Your capability is that you have a magic hunting sword, magic dragon hunting sword. Uh, so this thing will make it so you don't have to go and look for the dragon. It will guide you to the dragon. And you're supposed to go find this dragon and slay it. Uh, Along the way, you find 3 were-rats, and were-rats have, I don't know, 9 hit points each. Your sword deals 1d4 plus 6, so 7 to 10, and they're armed with shields and with breastplates, and these items each will reduce the amount of damage they take by 2, for a total of reduction of 4. So basically, you can do 3 to 6 damage per hit. You have 30 hit points. They're armed with spears that do, um, let's say, just 4 damage. No dice added in per hit. And you have plate armor and a shield. And so, no, no, no. Let's make it so the spear does 5. You have plate armor and a shield, and so the plate armor, rather than the breastplate, does 3 damage reduction, and your shield does only 2 damage reduction, for a total of 5. So you don't take any damage. They'll take um, 3 to 6 damage over time per hit. In time, you'll be able to fight them and defeat them. And then after that, you get rewarded with 10 experience and 20 gold each for a total of 30 experience and 60 gold. And you get to take their spears if you want. They're nice and throwable. Um, though maybe one of them is broken a bit, so it's not super effective for throwing, but it is perfectly fine for turning into an arrow, I guess. Maybe, if you whittle it down a lot. Um, right, so a lot of this is aesthetic. Um, Pardon me for a moment. The light is going down a little. Right, so now you are dealing with visuals, you're dealing with game effects, you're dealing with a task. Multiple stage task, actually. So break it down to different tasks. You need to defeat where at A, where at B, where at C. Gosh, why does this thing flicker? And you need to beat the dragon. You have an option to additionally take spears, right? Maybe these spears won't do anything except distract the creature. It'll be useful for climbing if you use it right, and you could attempt to I don't know. You could use it for stuff, I suppose, right? Whatever it is, it's a spear after all. Maybe you want to conceal your blade and charge it with the spear, so that way it doesn't take you seriously. And then maybe, I don't know, maybe not taking you seriously will mean that it doesn't use all of its combat capabilities. It won't bother with trying to roast you with its fire breath. It'll only take one slice at you as you approach, rather than recognize the danger of a magic sword that's totally capable of hurting it properly. Right? I don't know. Could you imagine something like that? I mean, what changes if the knight inside, or if the dragon, are metallic? I've gone over this before. It's different materials. The aesthetic changes. The task could be different. Um, Maybe you can't hurt it with a sword of dragon hunting anymore. You need a sword of golem hunting. It's a dragon golem. That's a weird concept, I know, but like, just pretend with me for a moment. So you pick the wrong sword. The enchantment isn't enough to make it so that you can cut through. You'll fail over time if it uses its dragon golem breath, and all that because it just burns and it does damage over time. It does 3 damage each turn extra, in fact, because it manages to really heat up the armor inside. It was doing uh, 10 damage uh, after rounding down because your plate is protecting you directly along with your shield, but you can't hold the shield very long, and you are knocked prone because the shield can only protect you from a certain amount of damage before you are forced prone by a certain kind of of impact or blast or something, right? I don't know. But like that changes something, right? If you want it to. But I'll give you an example of where it doesn't necessarily change anything to change the aesthetic. Skins. If you're fighting in a game where Godzilla and Mechagodzilla have all the same stats and they have the same poses and they have the same combat capabilities and they have the same fighting style and they have the same special moves and they have the same rate at which they fill up their special move bar, right? It's all a fighting game or something like a 3D fighter game. I don't know. And at the end of the day, the only thing that's different between them is how they look. That one of them is called Mechagodzilla, and that you can't pick to be multiple of any particular character. You're basically playing Godzilla versus Godzilla for that match, or Mechagodzilla versus Mechagodzilla, however you think of it. Gameplay wise, mechanics and action and stuff. And your quest is obviously to fight things, your reward is obviously victory. And your tools are the same, your aesthetics are different. So I had to really think about this, right? And I think this applies easily to ships too. Um, I think in the long term, biological mechs or techno-organic mechs, um, provided that there's really no metal involved or very little metal involved, I think the only difference is I would use a tune-up, which is a particular kind of function in my game to give certain types of game effects that are not always all of mech, and they're not always stuff that would make more sense with a pilot's training in particular. Like, you could have a pilot who is really good at close combat using a mech that just doesn't have the right servos for that stuff. It has the right thrusters for getting away from things. It has the right um, capabilities for precise aiming in the hand, but it doesn't have the right arm and elbow and shoulder stuff to be able to swing a sword very well or even to hit something very effectively. Right? Maybe that guy can translate getting out and away from something enough that he can get used to needing to shoot at stuff. I don't know. Right? It's what changes, right? What changes when you make something organic from biological, or sorry, from metallic? Obviously, this thing can heal now without external assisters. Let's call it like you don't need external beings to uh, necessarily like you might still, but like pretending there's basic injuries, right? You get a little bruising. Maybe you get a small infection, it's nothing too bad, such as my cold right now. Maybe at the end of the day, you get a certain amount of points you can recover for every time that you're not taking, your efforts and putting into combat for like a maintenance period. Um, Instead, it gets called a rest if you really want to bother with that. Right. I can't I can't imagine much changes. A giant robot and a giant monster that can do the same stuff and look different and have the same task, and they get more or less the same output and rewards. Um, like, what's the difference? And I think the difference ultimately is the aesthetics, how you feel as a player, especially in the aesthetics, and one of them probably is a little less durability. I'm gonna differentiate durability from armor by saying in my game, while I don't have a durability stat, there is stuff that says you take or receive more or less damage. So maybe you take 1 point more damage per attack, and you can regain 20, or you can, rather than only regaining a certain amount of, or a certain percentage of your hit points maximum while doing a short maintenance cycle, you regain all of your hit points, or you gain like 5% more, or something. I don't know. It's a good question. Yeah. Well, I suppose also between that and you're not affected by computer viruses anymore, probably. Um, then there's the stuff that gets in between, right? What if you're half robot, half not robot? And I know that part of that's going to come down to, well, is your head robotic? Let's say it's an arm and a leg, right? I mean, you're not going to get infected by a computer virus unless someone directly in places one in there, unless your arm and leg have Wi-Fi capabilities. That'd be interesting. It'd be weird as hell, but it'd be interesting. So, yeah, I know kaiju and all that are big staples, more so in Super Robot than in Real Robot. Not that Real Robot doesn't have examples, but its most recent examples, for the most part, are just newer entries within certain series. Um, I don't know if Macross has anything super new going on, but I know that Muv-Luv, with their beta creatures, has kaiju, essentially. Uh, pretty sure some of those creatures are only like the size of a tank and can kick the crap out of so many fucking machines, but still, right? Um, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's really it. I think yeah, healing, a little less durability, immunity to ECM effects, maybe certain ECM effects, not all of them. That would make sense. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Tomorrow, um, after some prep uh, for sound and having everything arranged properly on screen, my friend Oscar and I are are planning to do a recording of a Tetsuno Shiro game uh, match, just me versus him, and I don't know how many of the rules I will properly remember. I always forget a couple here and there. uh, I'll be using Albert Rodeo 2.0, which is a really helpful tool. I'll probably have to set up a uh, new room for that. Yeah, I'll have to set up a new room for that, I think. That's it. That's all. Have a nice day, everyone.